I'll give you $1 million if you accept my order. In Arabic.
The billionaire's tone carried both arrogance and challenge, echoing through the hushed dining room. But what came next silenced everyone. The waitress's fluent response left the entire restaurant stunned. Your support means everything. Like, comment, and subscribe so we can keep bringing you more stories like this. And also tell us which city you're from, we'd love to know. Now, let's begin today's story. Table 7 needs attention. Rachel Morgan adjusted her red apron and nodded to her manager before walking toward the corner table. Working at the Imperial, one of Los Angeles's most exclusive fine dining restaurants, meant facing the world's elite, actors, politicians, CEOs, and billionaires who treated staff like they were invisible. Still, the job paid the bills, and after what had happened at the United Nations 2 years earlier, she had learned to find comfort in anonymity. The man at table 7 radiated confidence and power. He wore a midnight blue suit tailored to perfection, likely worth more than Rachel made in an entire year. Lounging in his chair like a king on his throne, he looked completely in control. His dark beard was trimmed with precision, outlining full lips that curved into an expression of permanent amusement. 2 men in similar suits sat beside him, clearly his subordinates, each alert but deferential. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to the Imperial," Rachel said politely, her tone calm and professional. "May I start you off with something to drink?" Her practiced smile didn't falter, even as the man's gaze lingered on her face a little too long, studying her like an object on display. Instead of responding to her directly, he turned to his companions and said something in Arabic. They laughed loudly, their amusement echoing through the room. Rachel's face remained perfectly neutral. Years of customer service had taught her restraint. She had encountered far worse. "A bottle of your 1982 Napa Valley Reserve wine," the man finally said, his accent smooth and deliberate. "And perhaps you can recommend something special." His dark eyes glanced at her name tag, then returned to her face, curiosity flickering behind the arrogance. "The chef's tasting menu is exceptional this evening," Rachel replied, her voice steady. "It features a Wagyu beef course that isn't part of the regular menu." He leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on the table, the corners of his mouth turning upward. "I'm not interested in what everyone else orders. I'm Khalid Al-Mansour. Perhaps you've heard of me." Rachel hadn't, but she nodded with the polite detachment of someone used to inflated egos. "I own the Al-Mansour Falcon Group," he continued, his tone self-satisfied. "I just purchased the building across the street. Soon, this entire block will belong to me." "Congratulations, Mr. Al-Mansour. I'll bring your wine," Rachel said evenly, turning to leave. "Wait." His tone sharpened. The air in the restaurant seemed to shift, even the quiet conversations at nearby tables faded. "I have a proposition for you." His companions exchanged amused glances, clearly anticipating his next move. Rachel's stomach tensed, but she kept her face impassive. "Sir?" Khalid slowly drew a sleek leather wallet from his jacket. With exaggerated care, he took out a check and placed it on the table in front of her. $1 million, he said, his deep voice carrying just far enough for other diners to hear. "If you can take my dinner order in Arabic." The restaurant fell silent. The pianist stopped mid-note. Every head turned toward their table. "That's inappropriate, sir," Rachel said quietly, but there was strength in her voice. "Is it?" Khalid's smile widened. "I'm simply appreciating culture. Most Americans can barely speak one language. Prove me wrong, $1 million. Just a few sentences in Arabic. Or is that too difficult for a waitress?" He said the word waitress like it was an insult. A spark of anger rose in Rachel's chest, burning hotter than her embarrassment. Khalid leaned back, satisfied. "As I thought," he said smugly. But before he could finish his thought, Rachel began speaking, flawless Arabic, her pronunciation crisp and confident. "I would like to take your order, sir. What would you like to eat this evening?" The laughter died instantly. Khalid's smug expression dissolved into shock, and his companions looked equally stunned. Rachel continued in Arabic, her voice steady but filled with quiet pride. "May I recommend our signature Wagyu beef? It's slow-cooked for 8 hours and seasoned with herbs imported from Morocco." The restaurant was utterly silent now. Even the servers had stopped moving, eyes fixed on her. Khalid was the first to recover. He replied in Arabic, his tone softer. Where did you learn to speak with such perfect dialect? Stanford University, Rachel answered in English. I specialized in Semitic languages. Khalid blinked in surprise. You studied linguistics at Stanford and now you're waiting tables? Career changes happen, she replied with a tight smile. Now, about that wine. As she turned to leave, he called after her, the check is yours. I'm a man of my word. Rachel paused, glancing over her shoulder. Keep your money, Mr. Al-Mansour. I don't need your charity. The words tasted like victory. She walked away, head high, heart racing. Behind her, Khalid Al-Mansour sat frozen in disbelief, perhaps for the first time in his life, completely at a loss for words. His companions exchanged uneasy looks, but Khalid couldn't take his eyes off her. The waitress, Rachel Morgan, moved gracefully through the restaurant, taking orders, pouring wine, pretending nothing had happened. There was nothing in her demeanor that hinted at what she had just done. Yet she had spoken Arabic with the skill of a diplomat, her accent precise and impossible to fake. Should I have security look into her? Asked Omar Rahim, his chief of security, his tone low and cautious. Khalid's dark eyes narrowed. No, he said after a pause. But find out everything you can about her. His reputation for thorough research was legendary. No business deal was ever made without complete background checks on everyone involved. Swirling the deep red wine in his glass, he murmured to himself, from Stanford linguistics to waiting tables, there's a story there. The truth was, Khalid was restless. Bored. He had spent the last 10 years rebuilding his family's empire from his father's ruined business. Now, at 32, he had achieved everything he set out to do. The Los Angeles expansion was nearly complete. His acquisition of the historic Pacific Tower was almost finalized. Success had become routine, predictable, empty. But this woman, this unexpected waitress with flawless Arabic and a guarded smile, was something he hadn't encountered in years, a mystery. When she returned with their appetizers, Khalid's attention was fixed entirely on her. He noticed things he'd missed before, the way she stood perfectly straight, the measured rhythm of her movements, the faint callus on her middle finger, a writer's mark. She placed each dish with precision, her gestures elegant and deliberate. These are compliments of the chef, she said, setting down delicate plates of seared scallops topped with truffle foam. Please thank him for me, Khalid replied, holding her gaze longer than necessary. And I owe you an apology for my earlier behavior. It was ungentlemanly. Rachel's expression remained calm and unreadable. Enjoy your meal, sir. As she walked away, Omar leaned in and spoke quietly. I have some preliminary information. Khalid raised an eyebrow. Already? Rachel Morgan, 24 years old, Omar said. California driver's license, Pasadena address until 2 years ago. Then nothing until she appeared in Los Angeles 14 months ago. Current address in Santa Monica. That's unusually light for you, Khalid remarked. It's unusually hard to trace, Omar replied. Almost as if her records were professionally erased. Khalid's intrigue deepened. In his experience, only people with something truly significant to hide went to that kind of effort. The meal continued, each course more decadent than the last, but Khalid barely touched his food. His attention stayed on Rachel, how she adapted her tone to each guest, how easily she shifted between polite warmth and cool professionalism. When she returned with dessert, a deconstructed pistachio baklava adorned with gold leaf, Khalid decided to try again. Ms. Morgan, he said, his tone smoother this time. May I ask you something? Her professional smile didn't waver. Of course, Mr. Al-Mansour. Why would someone with your education choose this line of work? His question was genuine, his arrogance replaced by curiosity. Rachel smiled faintly. Perhaps I enjoy it, she said simply. Khalid tilted his head, studying her. Do you? A ghost of a real smile touched her lips. Some days more than others. And today has had its challenges. She glanced meaningfully at him, but there was no anger in her eyes now, only composure. Khalid found himself smiling in return, a genuine smile, not the polished one he wore for business. The check still stands. $1 million. No strings attached. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Why? Because I made a bet and lost, he replied calmly. I'm a businessman, Ms. Morgan. I honor my commitments. It wasn't a contract, she said dryly. It was a joke, at my expense. Then consider it compensation for my rudeness. Rachel studied him for a long moment, searching for sincerity. Donate it to the Global Refugee Education Fund, she said at last. They do good work. Before Khalid could respond, a commotion at the restaurant entrance drew everyone's attention. A tall man with silver hair in an expensive suit was arguing with the maitre d'. Even from across the room, Khalid could see he was drunk. Rachel's entire expression changed in an instant. Her back straightened, and the color drained from her face. Without another word, she turned and hurried toward the kitchen. Khalid watched with curiosity as the maitre d' reluctantly let the man inside. The stranger stumbled forward, scanning the restaurant with unfocused, bloodshot eyes, until they landed on Rachel's retreating figure. "Rachel," his voice rang across the dining room. "Rachel Morgan." She froze for half a second, then kept walking without looking back. The man tried to follow her, but the restaurant manager intercepted him. "What's going on?" asked Faisal, one of Khalid's dinner companions. "I'm not sure," Khalid murmured. "But I intend to find out." He gave Omar Rahim a subtle nod. Omar rose smoothly and approached the scene, showing credentials to the manager. After a brief exchange, he escorted the intoxicated man toward the exit. By the time Rachel returned to their table, the incident had ended. If not for the tightness around her eyes, she might have seemed completely composed. "Is everything all right?" Khalid asked. "Yes," she said shortly. "Will there be anything else, gentlemen?" He hesitated, then decided not to press her. "Just the check, the real one," he added with a faint smile. As she processed the payment, Khalid made a decision. On the tip line, he wrote a different amount, $10,000, and signed with a flourish. "This is too much," Rachel said when she saw it. "Consider it an investment," he replied. "In what?" "In a future conversation." He handed her a business card. "Call me if you ever decide you want more than this." Her eyes flashed with defiance. "Not all of us measure success by the size of our bank accounts, Mr. Al-Mansour." He smiled slightly. "No?" She returned the card. "Integrity, something money can't buy." As she walked away, Khalid felt something unfamiliar stir within him. Respect, curiosity, maybe even admiration. He couldn't remember the last time anyone had spoken to him that way. "Sir," Omar said as he returned to the table, lowering his voice. "You should know something about that man." "Who was he?" "Ryan Blake, former State Department official," Omar replied quietly. "And according to what I could find, Rachel Morgan once worked directly for him." "You need to leave now." Barbara Fulton stood in the doorway of their small Pasadena apartment, arms crossed, her expression tight with worry. Behind her, suitcases were already packed. "What's going on?" Rachel asked, exhausted after a double shift. Her tense encounter with Khalid Al-Mansour was still fresh in her mind, but Ryan Blake's unexpected appearance overshadowed everything. "Two men were asking about you in the building," Barbara said. Her voice shook slightly. "They had your picture. Dark suits, earpieces. They didn't look like police." Cold fear gripped Rachel. "Did they see you?" "No. Mrs. Peterson from 3B warned me." "Rachel, you promised when you moved in that whatever you were running from wouldn't follow you here." "I know. I'm sorry." Moving quickly, Rachel grabbed the emergency bag from her closet, passport, cash, a burner phone, and the small gun she'd hoped never to use again. "Is this about your old job? The one you never talk about?" Barbara pressed. Rachel paused, torn between honesty and protection. Barbara had been a good friend, she deserved at least something. "I used to work as a translator," Rachel said finally. "I overheard something I shouldn't have. People died." She zipped up the bag. "That's all I can tell you." Barbara's expression softened. "Where will you go?" "It's better if you don't know." Rachel hugged her tightly. "I'll send money for rent until you find a new roommate." "Forget the rent," Barbara said, her voice breaking. "Just stay safe." 20 minutes later, Rachel was in a taxi heading toward Santa Monica. She ditched her phone after sending a single coded text to Marcus, her only remaining contact from her past life. He would understand it, weather turning bad, seeking new climate. The past was catching up with her, just as she'd feared. Ryan Blake showing up drunk at the restaurant wasn't a coincidence. After 2 years of running, she had grown complacent, and now she was paying for it. The taxi dropped her at a busy intersection. She walked 3 blocks before hailing another cab to throw off any potential pursuit. At a small hotel, she checked in under an alias, paid cash for 3 nights, and finally allowed herself to breathe. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she tried to piece together the puzzle. Ryan's sudden appearance the same night as Khalid couldn't be a coincidence. But what was the connection? The name Al Mansour didn't appear anywhere in her memories from the United Nations or the State Department. Her burner phone buzzed. A message from Marcus, mutual friend asking questions. Not alone. Safe house compromised. Meet at the museum. Noon tomorrow. Rachel closed her eyes, exhaustion threatening to overwhelm her. Sleep would have to wait. She opened her laptop and began searching for information on Khalid Al Mansour. What she found painted a clear picture: 32 years old, son of a moderately successful Emirati businessman and an American mother, educated at Columbia University. He had inherited his father's struggling hotel business at 22 after both parents were killed in a plane crash. Over the next decade, he transformed one mid-tier property into the Al Mansour Falcon Group, a global luxury chain with resorts on 5 continents. What interested Rachel more was what she couldn't find. No scandals, no political affiliations, no suspicious business connections that linked him to her past work. By all appearances, Khalid Al Mansour was exactly who he claimed to be, a successful businessman with an arrogant streak. A knock at the door jolted her. Rachel froze, her hand instinctively reaching for the gun in her bag. No one was supposed to know she was here. "Ms. Morgan," came a muffled male voice. "I apologize for the late hour." She recognized the voice, Omar Rahim. Her pulse quickened. How had they found her so fast? "I'm not here to harm you," he continued. "Mr. Al Mansour would like to speak with you. It's important." "Give me one reason why I should trust you," Rachel said, keeping her voice steady, the gun now in her hand. "Because Ryan Blake was found dead an hour ago," Omar said gravely, "and you're about to be framed for his murder." The world tilted beneath her feet. Ryan, dead? Impossible. "If you don't believe me, check the news," Omar added. Rachel unlocked her phone and found the alert immediately: former State Department official found dead in Los Angeles hotel. Her mind raced. She approached the door cautiously. "How did you find me?" "We followed the men who were following you," he replied. It made a terrible kind of sense. Peering through the peephole, Rachel saw Omar standing alone, hands empty and visible. "Mr. Al Mansour is waiting in the car," he said quietly. "He thinks he knows why this is happening, and he wants to help." "Why would he help me?" she asked. "Because his parents' plane crash wasn't an accident," Omar said, his tone steady. "And he believes that the same people who killed them are now coming for you." Rachel's thoughts spun rapidly. The connection she'd been missing wasn't tied to her time at the United Nations, it went back further, to her father's diplomatic career. "My father," she said suddenly. "Richard Morgan. He worked with the royal family in the 90s. Omar nodded. "He saved Khalid's father during an attempted coup. Tonight, Mr. Al Mansour realized who you were." The pieces fell into place with dizzying speed. Her father's mysterious death 5 years earlier, ruled a heart attack despite his good health, the classified files she discovered at the State Department, and now, this. Rachel thought of the conversation she had overheard, the one that had forced her into hiding. "I need answers," she said at last. "Mr. Al Mansour has some," Omar replied. "And together you might find the rest." Rachel made her choice. She grabbed her bag, tucked the gun into her waistband, and opened the door. Outside, a sleek black Rolls-Royce waited at the curb. As Omar opened the rear door, Rachel saw Khalid watching her, his expression grave. The swaggering businessman from the restaurant was gone, replaced by someone far more dangerous. "Ms. Morgan," he said as she slid into the seat beside him. "I believe we have a common enemy." "And who would that be?" His eyes met hers, dark with controlled fury. "The same people who murdered our fathers, and now they're tying up loose ends, starting with Ryan Blake and ending with us." The car eased away from the curb, carrying Rachel into another uncertain future, this time with the most unlikely ally. "We need to move quickly," Khalid said. Khalid's penthouse overlooked Griffith Park, the glittering city a stark contrast to the tension in the room. "They'll realize you've disappeared soon enough." Rachel stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, arms crossed protectively. I am still waiting for you to tell me who they are. Khalid poured 2 glasses of whiskey and offered one to her. When she hesitated, he took a deliberate sip from her glass before handing it back. Trust issues. Understandable, given the circumstances. She accepted the drink but did not taste it. My father, Ibrahim al-Mansour, was not just a hotelier, Khalid said, settling into a leather armchair. He was an intelligence asset for the United States, working with the CIA's Middle Eastern division throughout the 1990s. Rachel's eyes widened. My father was stationed in Dubai during that time. Exactly. Richard Morgan, cultural attaché. At least that was his cover. Khalid's gaze was steady. He was CIA, was he not? She stayed silent for a long moment, then nodded. Yes, but I did not learn that until after his death. Our fathers worked together to stop a coup that would have destabilized the entire region, Khalid continued. Your father saved mine during an assassination attempt in 1998. Khalid pulled out his phone and showed her a faded photograph, 2 younger men standing together, smiling. One was clearly Ibrahim al-Mansour, the other Richard Morgan. I have never seen this, Rachel whispered, taking the phone. They became friends, not just asset and handler. When my father married my American mother, your father was his best man, Khalid said softly. After the coup attempt failed, my father was relocated to London, where I was born. We returned to the United Arab Emirates only after things stabilized, but he kept his ties to American intelligence. And this relates to Ryan Blake how? Rachel asked, handing back the phone. Blake was State Department, but he had deep CIA connections, Khalid said. When my parents died in that plane crash 10 years ago, he handled the American side of the investigation, which concluded it was an accident. Rachel frowned. And? Yes, except it was not. His jaw tightened. The official story blamed mechanical failure, but I have spent years gathering evidence that the plane was sabotaged by the same faction that attempted the coup years earlier. That is a serious accusation. I have proof. He pulled a leather portfolio from his desk and spread documents across the table, bank transfers, encrypted communications, flight maintenance records that had mysteriously disappeared from official reports. Rachel scanned the pages, her translators eye-catching inconsistencies in the Arabic documents. These maintenance logs were altered. Yes, and I believe Ryan Blake was involved in the cover-up. Her thoughts raced. When I worked at the United Nations as a translator, I overheard Blake discussing something called Operation Sandstorm with Emirati officials. I did not understand the significance then, but when I brought it up to him later, he turned threatening. What exactly did you hear? Khalid asked, leaning forward. Names, dates, something about Phase 2 being initiated. She swallowed. 2 weeks later, classified documents appeared in my secure diplomatic pouch, files that named Belov and several others involved in selling intelligence to an underground organization. The same members of that group who tried to stage a coup, Khalid said grimly, the ones your father helped protect against. I took the documents to my superior, Rachel continued. 3 days later, he died in a robbery gone wrong. That is when I ran. I changed my identity and disappeared. I thought I was being paranoid until your father died of a convenient heart attack, Khalid finished softly. Tears pricked her eyes. How did you know? Because that is their signature. My mother's brother died the same way 6 months after my parents, clean and untraceable. Rachel finally took a long sip of whiskey. So Ryan's death was not my fault. It was a message. They are cleaning house, eliminating anyone who might connect them to Operation Sandstorm. Khalid held her gaze. Including us. Why now, after all this time? Because the final phase is approaching. He pointed to a document that traced a complex transaction. They have been siphoning billions from Emirati sovereign wealth funds for years, using shell companies and cryptocurrency to hide the money. Next week those funds are scheduled to be transferred to accounts controlled by former Emirati intelligence officials, the same men who orchestrated the coup attempt 25 years ago. And they plan to use that money for what, exactly? To finance something big, he said darkly. Something that would destabilize not only the Emirates but the entire Middle East. I have tracked their movements and their purchases, weapons, mercenaries. They are planning coordinated strikes across multiple countries. Rachel felt the blood drain from her face. How could they possibly pull that off without intelligence agencies knowing? Because they have allies inside those agencies, Blake included. The implications hit hard. Rachel paced the room, mind racing. We need to take this to the authorities. And tell them what? Khalid asked. That an Emirati hotelier and an American waitress uncovered an international conspiracy? We would be dismissed as paranoid, or silenced before we could speak. Then what do you suggest? We find proof that links them to Blake's murder and to Operation Sandstorm, evidence so irrefutable that even their allies in government cannot ignore it. And where do we find that? Khalid's smile turned dangerous. The annual charity gala is tomorrow night at my flagship hotel. Tariq al-Rashid will be there, the man I believe orchestrated my parents' deaths and this entire operation. You're going to confront the one who orchestrated all this, at your own charity event? No, he said smoothly. I want to steal the evidence from his hotel suite while he is downstairs at my charity event. You cannot be serious. Deadly serious. His security will be focused on him. His suite will be vulnerable. That is insane. Even if we could access his room, what makes you think he would bring incriminating evidence with him? Because I made sure he would. Khalid's eyes gleamed. I spent 10 years building this hotel empire for one purpose, to get close to these men, to earn their trust, to lure them into my territory. Understanding dawned. All this time, your business, your success, was a means to an end. His voice hardened. Justice for my parents. Respect mingled with apprehension in her chest. She had misjudged him. Beneath the arrogant billionaire exterior stood someone driven by the same need for truth that had consumed her life. Rachel exhaled slowly. I still think this is insane, she said at last. Do you have a better plan? Khalid asked calmly. She didn't. And deep down, she knew he was right. Besides, Khalid added, his tone softening, you speak 6 languages and managed to vanish for 2 years without leaving a trace. I doubt breaking into a hotel room is beyond your abilities. Despite everything, Rachel found herself smiling. I never said I couldn't do it, she replied. I just said it was crazy. So, you'll help me? Their eyes locked for a moment, a silent understanding forming between them. Two people from opposite worlds, bound by tragedy and a dangerous mission neither could walk away from. Yes, she said finally. But we do this my way. Clean. Professional. With contingency plans for when, not if, something goes wrong. Khalid nodded, a flicker of respect in his gaze. Agreed. Omar entered, his expression grim. Sir, there's been a development. The police are at Ms. Morgan's apartment. They've issued a warrant for her arrest in connection with Ryan Blake's murder. Faster than I expected, Khalid muttered. Rachel felt the air tighten around her. I need to leave the country. No, Khalid said firmly. That's exactly what they want, to make you panic. The moment you cross a border or walk into an airport, they'll grab you. So I'm trapped? No, he corrected, you're protected, for now. This penthouse has a private elevator and security measures that would impress the Pentagon. No one gets in without my authorization. He stepped closer, near enough that she could smell the subtle mix of sandalwood and spice that lingered on his skin. One night, he said quietly. Tomorrow we get the evidence. After that, my jet will take us wherever we need to go. Rachel felt a strange flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with fear. Us. I started this hunt 10 years ago, Khalid said softly. I intend to finish it. Something in his voice stirred emotions she thought she'd buried long ago. One night, she agreed, stepping back slightly to steady herself. But I'm not wearing a ball gown to commit felony breaking and entering. Khalid's smile returned, transforming his face. Actually, that's exactly what you'll be wearing. Sometimes the best disguise is hiding right in plain sight. For the first time in years, Rachel felt something unfamiliar, hope. Tomorrow would change everything, one way or another. The next evening, the sapphire gown shimmered under the chandeliers of the Pacific Grand Hotel's ballroom. Rachel adjusted the delicate mask covering the upper half of her face, grateful for the anonymity it offered at the masquerade charity gala. Across the room, Khalid caught her eye and raised his champagne glass in acknowledgement. He looked striking in a black tuxedo, his mask lending him an air of mystery that fit him perfectly. No one would ever suspect that beneath their elegant exteriors, they were planning a high-stakes infiltration. Remember, Omar's voice came through the nearly invisible earpiece. Tariq al-Rashid arrived 10 minutes ago. Suite 4208. His security detail includes 4 men, 2 at the gala, 2 on the executive floor. Copy that, Rachel murmured, pretending to sip her champagne. The plan was simple in design, but dangerously precise. As the host, Khalid would keep al-Rashid occupied at the gala, while Rachel, introduced as his companion, a French art dealer named Isabelle Lauren, would quietly slip away and use the security credentials Omar had prepared to access the executive floor. Enjoying yourself, darling? Khalid appeared beside her, his hand settling lightly at the small of her back. Immensely, she said in a soft French accent. Your charity events are always so stimulating. Wait until the after-party, he murmured, lips near her ear. To onlookers, they looked like lovers. In reality, he was updating her. Al-Rashid brought his entire entourage. Security's tighter than expected. Nothing I can't handle, she whispered back. Her confidence wasn't all for show. The skills that once made her an exceptional diplomatic translator, attention to detail, adaptability, and quick thinking had kept her alive for 2 years. I don't doubt it, Khalid said. Something in his tone made her glance up. Their eyes met through the masks, and the admiration she saw there caught her off guard. Mr. Al-Mansour, a heavily accented voice interrupted. A magnificent event, as always. Khalid turned smoothly, instantly transforming back into the charming host. Mr. Al-Rashid, I'm honored you could attend. Tariq al-Rashid was tall and lean, his silver hair and neatly trimmed beard giving him a regal air. His eyes, however, were cold and calculating as they studied Rachel. And who is this enchanting lady? He asked. This is Isabelle Lauren, Khalid said, squeezing her hand in warning. A dear friend from Paris. Enchante, Rachel murmured, extending her hand. Al-Rashid brought it to his lips. The pleasure is mine, mademoiselle. Something about his touch made her skin crawl, but she kept her mask of polite elegance. This was the man responsible for Khalid's parents' deaths, and possibly her father's. Isabelle is curating my new art collection, Khalid added smoothly. She has an exceptional eye for value. Indeed. Al-Rashid's gaze lingered too long. Perhaps she might offer her opinion on some of my recent acquisitions. Another time, perhaps, Khalid said quickly. The auction's about to begin. You're seated beside me, of course. As they moved toward the main table, Al-Rashid glanced back at Rachel. There was a flicker of recognition in his expression that sent a chill down her spine. Omar's voice came through her earpiece again. Security shift change. You've got 12 minutes. Rachel waited 30 seconds, then slipped quietly toward the exit, pausing to chat with a passing waiter to establish her presence before disappearing into the hall. In the corridor, she moved swiftly toward the service elevator and swiped the access card Omar had provided. The executive floor was silent, the thick carpet muffling her footsteps. Using a small tablet connected to the hotel's system, she tracked the guards' movements, 2 red dots moving away from suite 4208. Perfect. The suite's door had both a keycard reader and digital keypad. Omar had given her the override codes, promising they'd work. Rachel held her breath as she entered the sequence. When the light turned green, she exhaled and slipped inside. The suite was lavish, even by Al-Mansour Falcon Group standards. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the glittering Los Angeles skyline. Rachel worked fast, searching for the briefcase Khalid had described, a custom Hermes case with gold hardware. She found it locked inside the closet safe. The override code worked again, and the safe swung open. I've got it, she whispered into her mic, beginning extraction. The briefcase was secured with both fingerprint and retinal scanners, nearly impossible to bypass. But Omar had prepared for that. From her clutch, Rachel pulled what looked like a compact mirror but was, in fact, a sophisticated decoding device. She placed it over the biometric panel, and it began cycling through stored patterns until it found a match. 2 minutes, Omar warned. Guards are completing their rounds. The device beeped softly and the briefcase clicked open. Inside were several folders and a small external hard drive. Rachel worked quickly, photographing the documents with a miniature camera hidden inside a lipstick tube, then duplicating the hard drive's contents onto a clean device that would leave no trace. What she found made her stomach twist. Operation Sandstorm was far worse than either of them had imagined, not just a coup attempt, but a network of coordinated attacks designed to plunge the region into chaos. The files listed operatives, financial transfers, weapons caches, and most shocking of all, communications signed by someone identified only as American Eagle, Blake. The evidence was undeniable: emails, photos, and bank transfers linked Tariq al-Rashid, Ryan Blake, and others to a conspiracy of staggering scale. 30 seconds, Omar's voice came through her earpiece. Rachel finished the download, returned every item to its exact place, and closed the briefcase. She slid it back into the safe, reset the lock, and was halfway to the door when voices sounded in the corridor. Check on the package before rejoining Mr. al-Rashid. Guards were coming to the suite. Rachel froze and ran options. The bathroom was too obvious. Under the bed was childish. The balcony might work, but it was risky. 42 floors above the city left no margin for error. The voices drew closer. The card reader beeped. In a split second, Rachel slipped behind the heavy floor-length curtains just as the door opened. She kept her breathing steady as footsteps crossed the suite. 2 men spoke in Arabic. One performed a routine check of the safe. The other moved around the sitting room. Neither came near the window, but Rachel's pulse hammered when one of them paused within arm's length. All secure, one said at last. Let's get back downstairs. The door closed. Rachel waited a full 30 count, then stepped out, legs unsteady with adrenaline. Status? Omar asked, tension in his voice. Mission accomplished, she whispered. Heading back now. The return went smoothly: service elevator to the mezzanine, a quick stop in the ladies' room to regroup, then back into the gala. Khalid found her instantly, relief evident even behind his mask. Everything all right, darling? He asked for nearby ears. Perfect, she said, smiling up at him. Although I have a bit of a headache. Perhaps we could leave soon. Of course. He signaled for champagne. One last toast and we go. As they clinked glasses, Tariq al-Rashid approached with a stunning woman on his arm. Leaving so soon, Al-Mansour? The night is young. Isabel is not feeling well, Khalid said smoothly. Al-Rashid narrowed his eyes, studying Rachel. Have we met before, mademoiselle? There is something familiar about you. Her heart skipped, but her smile held. I doubt it. I spend most of my time in Europe. Perhaps at the diplomatic reception in Geneva last year, he pressed. I am afraid not. I was in Barcelona that season. The lie came easily, her French accent flawless. Something shifted in his face, suspicion hardening into certainty. No, he said softly. I remember now. It was Washington, at the Emirati embassy. Ice slid through her veins. She had attended a function there during her United Nations days. Had he seen her? You are mistaken, Khalid cut in. Isabel has never been to Washington. Al-Rashid smiled, but his eyes stayed cold. My apologies, then. Memory can be unreliable. They offered polite excuses and moved toward the exit. Rachel could feel his gaze burning between her shoulder blades. He knew. Somehow, he knew. In the limousine, she finally let out the breath she had been holding. He recognized me. Impossible, Omar said from the front seat. Your cover was perfect. He mentioned Washington. The Emirati embassy. She turned to Khalid. I was there 3 years ago, translating for a United Nations delegation. Khalid's expression darkened. If he knows who you are, then we have lost the element of surprise. Did you get what we needed? He asked. Rachel nodded and pulled a miniature camera and a flash drive from her clutch. Everything: names, dates, plans, plus proof that Blake was their American contact. Then we still have leverage. Khalid took her hand, his touch unexpectedly gentle. One more night. We compile the evidence, create insurance files, and tomorrow we take it to the one person who can help us. Who? The current CIA director. My father's oldest friend. Hope sparked, and dimmed just as fast. If al-Rashid recognized me, we may not have until tomorrow. As if on cue, Omar's phone buzzed. His face tightened as he read. Security breach at the penthouse. Someone tried to override the elevator access. Khalid's grip on her hand tightened. Change of plans. We are not going back to the penthouse. Where, then? Rachel asked. Somewhere they would never look for a billionaire and a fugitive. A faint smile touched his mouth. My mother's old apartment in Pasadena. I kept it after she died. It was never listed under my name. The limousine changed course, heading toward the historic bridge into Pasadena. A strange feeling of inevitability settled over Rachel. In less than 24 hours, her world had flipped again. But this time, she was not running alone. She glanced at Khalid and found him already watching her, his dark eyes intent. "Why are you helping me?" she asked softly. "You could have turned me in and saved yourself a lot of trouble." "Because 10 years ago I made a promise over my parents' graves to find the truth, no matter the cost." His voice lowered. "And because when you answered me in Arabic at the restaurant, I saw something I recognized." "What is that?" "Someone who refuses to be broken by circumstance." The simple truth of it reached a place she had kept guarded. For the first time in years, Rachel felt truly seen. As the city lights streaked past, she allowed herself to lean lightly against his shoulder. Tomorrow could bring justice, or ruin. Tonight, at least, she was not facing it alone. Dawn broke over the Pasadena neighborhood, painting the modest apartment in soft gold. Rachel sat cross-legged on the living room floor, surrounded by printouts of the evidence. Nearby, Khalid reviewed financial records on his laptop, jacket off, sleeves rolled, tie loose, a far cry from the polished billionaire the world knew. Omar came in with coffee and a set of burner phones he had picked up overnight. "No signs of surveillance," he said. "The safe house is secure for now." "Good," Rachel murmured, sorting another document into the growing proof pile. They had worked through the night, shaping an airtight case even the most skeptical officials could not ignore. "Director Harris has confirmed the meeting," Khalid said, checking one of the burners. "Noon today at the secure location." Rachel nodded, though worry chewed at the edges of her resolve. "If Al-Rashid has figured out who I am, we will be far away before he can act," Khalid reassured, placing his hand over hers. The casual warmth of the gesture surprised them both, but neither pulled away. 18 hours had forged a bond that defied explanation, shared purpose, parallel losses, and something more primal, recognition. "What happens after?" she asked quietly. "If this works, if we bring them down, what then?" Khalid considered, eyes distant. "I have not let myself think that far. Revenge has been my purpose for so long." Their eyes met, unspoken possibilities hanging in the space between them. Before he could answer, Omar's phone chimed again. "Perimeter alert," he said sharply, moving to the window. Black SUV. 2 men watching the building. "How?" Khalid demanded. "This address is not connected to me." "The guest list," Rachel said quickly. "If Al-Rashid has facial recognition, he could have identified me in spite of the mask." "And if they are tracking payments," Khalid added grimly, "the caterers. I had food delivered here last night, paid from an account they could trace." "We move now," Omar said, already packing the files into a secure briefcase. They had planned for this. The apartment offered 2 exits, the main door and a fire escape through the bedroom window. Rachel changed out of borrowed sweats into jeans and a hoodie, better for blending in and running if it came to that. Khalid emerged similarly dressed, almost unrecognizable. With a baseball cap pulled low and dark stubble softening his jaw, he looked like a different man. "Director Harris is sending a security team," he said, checking the second burner. "Arrival in 20 minutes. "We may not have 20 minutes, Omar warned, pulling the blinds back just enough to peer outside. 2 more men just joined the first team. They're moving toward the building. Rachel felt the familiar rush of adrenaline flood her system, the same instinct that had kept her alive during 2 years on the run. "The fire escape," she said quickly. "We can reach the subway before they realize we're gone." "And risk being separated?" Khalid shook his head sharply. "No. We stay together." "There's no time to argue," Omar cut in, his tone urgent. "They're inside the building." In the next few seconds, a plan was decided without another word. Omar would draw the pursuers' attention at the main entrance, while Rachel and Khalid escaped down the fire escape with a briefcase full of evidence. They would meet Director Harris at the backup location, an old boathouse in Griffith Park that Harris had used for off-the-record meetings for years. "Be careful," Khalid said, gripping Omar's shoulder firmly. "You too, sir." For the first time, Omar's usual formality cracked, revealing the deep trust and friendship beneath their professional bond. "It's been an honor." Rachel swallowed hard. That brief exchange hit her unexpectedly. These men were risking everything: Khalid's empire, Omar's career, their lives, all for justice, for truth, for her. They moved swiftly through the apartment and climbed out the window to the fire escape. The old metal groaned beneath their weight as they descended. 3 floors down, a shout echoed from above. The pursuers had reached the apartment. "Move!" Khalid urged, helping Rachel down the last ladder to the alley below. They ran. Rachel clutched the briefcase of evidence tightly to her chest while Khalid led the way through a maze of narrow alleys and side streets. He knew this area well from his childhood visits to his mother's old neighborhood. Each turn put more distance between them and their pursuers. Finally, a subway entrance came into view, salvation in the form of crowded anonymity. They rushed down the stairs just as a train screeched into the station. They jumped aboard, the doors closing behind them. Inside the crowded car, Rachel allowed herself a shaky breath. Beside her, Khalid checked his watch. 90 minutes until we meet Harris. "Will Omar be all right?" she asked quietly. "He can take care of himself," Khalid said, though concern flickered in his eyes. "And he has diplomatic immunity through my company. They can detain him, but they can't hold him." The train rumbled through the tunnels, the hum of ordinary life surrounding them, commuters lost in their phones, the faint smell of coffee, the rhythmic sway of the car. It was almost surreal. "Thank you," Rachel said suddenly. Khalid turned toward her. "For what?" "For believing me. For helping me." He studied her face for a long moment, then gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I should be the one thanking you. For 2 years, I've been collecting fragments of evidence, building a case piece by piece. But it was you who found the final proof we needed." The tenderness in his touch, so at odds with the arrogant man she'd met in the restaurant, stirred something in her chest. It was strange, she thought. In the middle of danger, hunted and exhausted, she felt more alive than she had in years. "If we survive this," she began hesitantly. "When we survive this," Khalid corrected softly. Rachel smiled faintly. "When we survive this, what will you do? Go back to your hotels, your old life?" Khalid's expression darkened. That life was built on vengeance. "Once this is done," he paused, his jaw tightening. "I don't know who I am without it." "You're the man who turned a $1 million bet into a mission for justice," Rachel said quietly. "The man who saw value in a waitress when everyone else saw someone to dismiss." Khalid's smile was small but real, softening the hard lines of his face. "And you are the woman who refused that $1 million on principle, who survived alone for 2 years rather than compromise her integrity." The train slowed as it neared the next station. Through the windows, Rachel caught a glimpse of Griffith Park's green expanse. Their destination was close. They exited carefully, scanning the area. The park stretched wide and peaceful under the clear morning light, but Rachel couldn't shake the sense that danger lurked beyond every tree. They walked briskly, weaving through winding paths and changing direction often to make sure they weren't followed. The boathouse appeared ahead, its classic white facade reflected in the still surface of the lake. 2 plainclothes men stood outside, blending in with the early joggers. Harris's security detail. They gave a subtle nod as Khalid and Rachel approached, the pre-arranged signal that the area was secure. Inside, Director Harris was waiting, a tall, broad-shouldered man with silver hair and piercing blue eyes. He greeted Khalid warmly, embracing him like family. "You look just like your father," he said gruffly. "Director Harris." Khalid's tone was respectful, but there was weight in his voice. "Thank you for coming. When the son of Ibrahim al-Mansour calls with evidence of a secret organization, I listen." Harris turned to Rachel, recognition flickering across his face. "And Rachel Morgan, you've been a ghost for 2 years." "Not by choice," Rachel replied quietly. "Your father was one of the best agents I ever worked with," Harris said. "His death never sat right with me." "It wasn't a heart attack," Rachel said simply. Harris nodded slowly. "I'm beginning to believe that." He gestured toward a long table covered in folders and equipment. "Show me what you've got." For the next 30 minutes, they laid everything out piece by piece: documents, hard drives, photographs, encrypted data, the culmination of 2 years of fear and 10 years of obsession. Operation Sandstorm, the details of it lay before them. The planned attacks, the financial web, the network of operatives planted within governments across the Middle East, and most damning of all, Ryan Blake's role as their American liaison. Director Harris's expression grew darker with every page. "This goes deeper than I imagined." He looked up from the evidence, his eyes grave. "You both understand what this means, don't you? There are elements within our own government that have been compromised." Khalid nodded grimly. Blake wasn't acting alone. "And Tariq al-Rashid has powerful allies who will try to bury this," Rachel added quietly. Harris nodded. "Which is why we move now. I've arranged a secure house for both of you while we coordinate the takedown." "Both of us?" Rachel asked. "You'll need to testify," Harris explained. "Until we've identified and neutralized al-Rashid's network, you remain in danger." Khalid reached for her hand, his eyes holding hers in silent question. Rachel gave a small nod. They were in this together, whatever came next. "What about the charges against Rachel?" Omar asked. "Already in motion," Harris said. "The evidence you brought clearly shows al-Rashid's team framed her for Blake's murder." Suddenly, commotion erupted outside, raised voices, a scuffle, and then silence. One of Harris's security men rushed in. "Sir, Omar Rahim is here. Says it's urgent." Omar burst through the door, blood streaking the side of his face. "They know," he gasped. "Al-Rashid is gone, fled the country an hour ago, but before he left, he activated sleeper cells. They're targeting the UN General Assembly session, today." Harris was immediately on the phone, barking rapid-fire orders to initiate evacuation and emergency security protocols. "How did you find us?" Khalid demanded, helping Omar to a chair. "Harris's team extracted me from the apartment," Omar explained, wincing as Rachel cleaned the gash on his temple. "It's nothing serious," he assured her. The next hour blurred into chaos. Harris coordinated a massive emergency response, deploying teams across the city and notifying international agencies. Thanks to the evidence Rachel and Khalid had gathered, authorities knew exactly where to strike, who to arrest, and what to prevent. By midday, breaking news flashed across every network: a major conspiracy uncovered, multiple arrests made. Tariq al-Rashid had escaped, for now, but his global network was collapsing. His assets were frozen, his allies under investigation. Operation Sandstorm had been neutralized before it could throw the Middle East into chaos. "It's over," Harris said at last, his shoulders easing for the first time in hours. "Not completely, these cases never are, but the immediate threat has been contained." "And Blake's co-conspirators in the government?" Rachel pressed. "Being handled quietly," Harris said, his tone grim. "There will be consequences, behind closed doors." "Now," he added, turning to them, "about that safe house." Khalid raised a hand. "Actually, I have another idea." 3 months later, Rachel stood on the deck of a sleek yacht anchored off the Malibu coast. The Pacific shimmered around her, sunlight dancing across endless blue. It felt like another world, far from Los Angeles restaurants and international conspiracies. Strong arms slid around her waist. She leaned back into Khalid's embrace. "Any regrets?" he murmured against her hair. Rachel turned to face him, her eyes soft with disbelief and affection. "Which one? Testifying against dangerous people, joining the witness protection program, or agreeing to marry you?" His smile still had the power to steal her breath. "All of the above?" "Not for a second," she said, rising on tiptoe to kiss him. "Though," she teased, "I'm still getting used to being Isabel Lauren." "Only on paper," he reminded her. "To me, you'll always be the waitress who turned down $1 million. And you'll always be the entitled billionaire who learned humility chasing justice," she replied, laughing. Their new identities, courtesy of Director Harris and the Witness Protection Program, were a small price to pay for peace. Khalid had stepped back from the daily operations of his hotel empire, though he retained control through complex security networks that even al-Rashid's remaining allies couldn't touch. Omar had fully recovered and now headed security for their foundation, the Morgan Al-Mansour Initiative for International Peace, funded by the same $1 million that had started it all. Justice had been served, though not perfectly. Some conspirators had escaped, others were shielded by political necessity. But the truth was out. Their fathers' legacies had been restored, and one of the longest-running deceptions in Middle Eastern politics had finally been exposed. Any second thoughts? Khalid asked, his tone more serious now. About your life in Los Angeles? Your career? Rachel laughed softly. My life as a waitress hiding from assassins? Not exactly a tough call. The sun was setting over the ocean, painting the sky in deep gold and crimson. In just a few days, they would be married in a private ceremony, Omar and a few trusted friends their only witnesses. Life had taken her from a diplomatic translator to a fugitive waitress to the fiancé of a reformed billionaire driven by justice. It wasn't the life she'd imagined, but as she stood in Khalid's arms, Rachel knew it was exactly where she was meant to be. You never did tell me, she said suddenly, smiling up at him. That night at the restaurant, when you offered me $1 million, did you ever imagine it would end like this? Khalid chuckled, drawing her close. Honestly? No. But I'm starting to think it was the best investment I ever made. As their lips met, Rachel silently agreed. Some things were worth far more than $1 million: truth, justice, and a love that began with an arrogant challenge in a Los Angeles restaurant and ended in redemption on the sunlit shores of California. Sometimes the most unexpected beginnings led to the most perfect endings. Like the video and subscribe to the channel. New stories are waiting for you on the screen.